My name is PJ Haas Salazar. I am a resident of Providence and a public school educator in Rhode Island. I am Chicano, Indigenous, and Mestiza. 95% of my students are people of color. Every day on my way to work, I drive past the Wyatt Detention Facility, which is also an ICE detention center. According to their mission statement, the primary mission of the Wyatt Detention Facility is to protect the public from people who pose a threat to society. However, every day as I pass this building, I think about how it is my duty to protect my students and their families from this center and an unjust policing and judicial system that may send them there. I'm here today to speak as a community advocate for defunding the Providence Police Department. Police brutality and understanding how to protect ourselves from the police has always been a part of my family history. In the late 1960s and early 70s, my father was beaten by the cops in Denver on more than one occasion. I, like many other Black and brown youth, was given the talk from an early age. If a police officer stops you, you listen, you don't resist. You say, yes, sir, no, sir. You don't give them any reason to take your life. You fear them, and even then you understand, even if you do everything right, you say, yes, sir, no, sir. You don't resist arrest. Even then, they still may take your life. In a recent conversation with my students around the death of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer, one of my students who is 8 looked at me and said, Miss, I'm confused. I don't understand. I thought police officers were supposed to protect people. Why would a police officer kill someone? Another student who is Black wrote to me that she feels like she's in a prison. She is afraid to go outside, not just because of the pandemic we are experiencing, but for the fear that her Black skin may cause her to die. She is 7. I'm sure that you are aware of the deaths of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless other Black Americans at the hands of respective local police, as well as the death of Ahmaud Arbery and countless others at the hands of white supremacists. Our country has a long history of the police using their social power to subjugate, torture, imprison, and murder Black and Indigenous and brown people at disproportionate rates. Some may call for reform, but I would like to remind you that Garrett Rolfe, the former officer now charged in the murder of Rayshard Brooks, received over 2,000 hours of training, including training in use of deadly force, de-escalation, and cultural awareness. No, it is not the time for reform. It is time to move towards community aid and services instead of supporting state-sanctioned violence by the police. I do not want to wait for a tragedy to happen in Providence. We do not need more police officers in Providence, and we do not need our police to be militarized. For our population size, we already have a hefty police presence. There are many cities with similar population sizes that have smaller police forces. It matters that our fiscal year 21 budget prioritizes increasing the amount of police presence in Providence. We need to change that. We need to prioritize our communities over the police. In the current fiscal year 21 budget, we are spending $88 million on the police. I believe we can cut all funds associated with red light cameras in the equestrian unit, totaling over $3.3 million. I believe we can significantly reduce the $256,000 allocated for guns and ammunition, K-9 unit supplies, and CAD lab supplies, in addition to the $297,000 allocated for auto parts. I believe we need to cut the $79.4 million associated with police salaries and benefits by at least 50% to account for the hiring and training of specialized unarmed community task forces. As I said before, we don't need more police in Providence. We need more specialized professionals who can serve their community unarmed and respond to situations that do not warrant an armed official. We need more investment in housing, education, healthcare, mental health, and social services, so the needs of our community are actually being met. In the time of COVID-19, when so many in our community are already struggling, I could not think of a more essential time to fund these services. Given that Governor Raimondo has announced that schools will be reopening in the fall, public schools will need more funds than originally allocated to purchase PPE, sneeze guards, individual student materials, materials to expand nurses' offices, and other supplies to ensure the safety of all students and staff. The school board has already put out a proposed budget that includes layoffs, furloughs, and salary freezes if the anticipated state and city aid increase does not come through. Hundreds of teachers across our city and state will lose their jobs when our schools are already failing and the CDC is recommending smaller class sizes, while the police will remain overfunded. Early childhood education and Providence Talks, an early intervention program aimed at closing the 30 million word gap, have had $425,000 cut from their budgets, while the police will remain overfunded. How can we justify spending $963,626 on uniforms for police officers when our schools are not properly funded, when our buildings are crumbling and infested with roaches, when there's only one social worker for the 1,300 students at Mount Pleasant High School? Who is more important to you? The 500 police officers in our force, or the 24,000 students in our district? About $1 billion is equivalent to the full salaries of 20 new teachers. About $1 billion is equivalent to 3,706 Chromebooks for students who wouldn't have access to distance learning otherwise. In the current proposed budget, our city spends $5,416 for each student in PPSD. Our city spends $176,000 for each sworn officer. Where are our priorities? How can we continue to say we don't have enough money for our schools when we are spending so much taxpayer money on the police?